Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Make It Better. I want to do a quick update on our wood floor garage. It's been 6 months. Hard to believe. So I recently got a couple questions about how this was holding up, both with weather and with weight. So it's time to let's dive in and take a look at it. Since I put the floor down, I moved some shop tools in here that have been used pretty regularly, and working on the wood floor has been significantly better than the gravel, both for comfort and if you drop something you can find it, and you can clean up the dust and all of the things. Oh, the dust is way lower than the gravel. Granted, I do have two of the three entryways still open, but we'll get into that in just a second. Also allowed me to take the time to put some organizational screws in the wall so things are hung up a little bit, and the place has been much more pleasant to use in general. So I did a super mediocre job of closing in this one section of the garage just to kind of see if I like the feng shuis of it all, and I think it's the right answer. So this prototype will hopefully not be the permanent, but we'll probably build an actual insert for this particular spot here. That does keep a decent amount of the weather out. For the most part, if it rains, almost no water gets in the garage. However, if you live on Earth like I do, it doesn't just rain anymore. It pours and the rain comes down sideways. So I typically will see rain up into that first seam right there. So this is pressure treated plywood, OSB, and everything beyond that seam is just 2 layers of OSB. But as you can see, the OSB is holding up quite well. It gets wet, it dries, it breathes, and there it is. So I'm not really having any issues with the weather 6 months in. Now I would like to, I think, build some half doors, like some stable style doors, because working out here I've really enjoyed it being open, actually, and I like seeing the cars, if I'm being honest. But half doors would prevent the leaves from blowing in, which they do, and it would prevent the rain from blowing in, which it does. There's enough of an overhang here that I think, you know, a 4-foot door would be more than enough to keep all of that out. So the weight of the vehicles is the next thing. These 2 cars have been in here the entire time. So mostly, sadly, sitting in the same spot. But let's take a look. So you can see a bit, I don't know if you can see, but hopefully you can see, there's a bit of a groove or an indentation where this tire is and where that front tire is, but not so much this back tire. So what that means is exactly what you would expect. It's not the wood's problem, it's what is underneath. Now, I recommend to anybody that's taking on a project like this, probably the same thing I recommended in the previous video, is maybe put a little bit of your money into having somebody professionally grade it, because it's back-breaking work. I did all of this by hand. I dug the foundation by hand, I laid the stone by hand, gravel, 4 inches of gravel by hand. It was terrible, and I didn't do a great job of it. And so anywhere the gravel sort of has a whoop-de-doo in it, well, if you put enough weight on it and you leave it there, it's gonna sag into that sort of contour. So the OSB is doing great. I maybe didn't do so great with what's under the OSB. Because of the way OSB is made, it doesn't have any voids in it. Certain plywoods will indeed have a void because it's plies of sheets. This is all oriented strands that are glued together layer by layer. So it doesn't really compress, and the pressure it can withstand, pounds per square inch, is really, really, really high for OSB. So if you happened to lay a flat floor, right, dirt, gravel, and got it really flat, and if you were really smart, did a layer of like pea gravel on top of your big crush run, I don't think you would see much deviation in your OSB at all. Now that said, let's take a look at how well it is moving as a unit floor. If you can see the contours and the way that it's moving around, the fact that there are 2 layers with overlapping seams, the floor is still staying really smooth as it kind of takes the shape of what is underneath, which it's going to do. But outside of that, can't really complain about it. You will see I do have the edges popping up in certain places, but that is purely laziness or oversight on my part. Take a look. This is popping up, but if I step on it, it will go back down. But if you look here, I somehow put 3 screws in this whole 8-foot run. So it should be screwed together every foot. And this is an 8-foot piece, and I put 3 screws in it. So we're missing 5, and it's still doing this well. And this is one of the pieces exposed to the weather. So a couple other things I've noticed while working on a wooden floor. First of all, it's got a little bit of bounce, so it's not as hard on the joints as a concrete floor. I know that doesn't sound like much, but if you're really out here all day carrying a bunch of heavy stuff, the little bit of spring does actually help out, I guess, over the course of the day. The other thing that I've noticed is, well, it just doesn't get as cold as concrete. So if you're laying on the ground because you like working on cars or some other thing that's got you like, you know, on your back, kind of crammed under something, then this stuff, you know, it's kind of pleasant. It's a little bit, it can be a little bit more pleasant than concrete, which in the winter is very, very cold. So this is bona fide C student work, laying a wooden shed floor directly onto the gravel. So I'm gonna jam the link to the other video somewhere up here so you can see the process of putting this in, but for anybody just kind of catching up right now, this is compacted dirt, then a vapor barrier, then 4 inches or so of crush run granite gravel, and then on top of that, I've got 2 layers of OSB, overlapping the seams, screwing it all together. That's it. So for some low cost, kind of C student quality work, this has been a huge, huge, huge improvement. I understand concrete is probably better, but this is much more affordable, and it's something that you can absolutely do yourself. I understand there are people out there who say that they can just frame the concrete themselves and have somebody else pour it, and by all means you absolutely can, but I think I laid this in a day. I don't really remember, but it wasn't that bad. And you know, there's a lot to be said for that because I'm impatient. I hope this was helpful to somebody out there. If it was helpful to you, please consider subscribing. We can all make it a little bit better, and we'll see you next time when we pick some kind of project. Smoker, front yard, make doors for the garage. I don't know. We're gonna do all those things eventually, starting soon. We gotta get after it. All right, we'll see you next time on Let's Make It Better.